Hi guys, today we're talking about using found sounds to create musical pieces. Found sounds are basically samples from like everyday life, I guess, non-musical sounds, which we're going to turn into music. So I've spent the last couple of weeks working on this project called Inflated Inspirations. Inflated Inspirations is a collaboration between a large group of balloon artists and this arts platform I really like and do a lot of stuff for called Pop My Mind. These are the same guys that got me to do a load of sonification stuff, which you may or may not remember from this channel. So this project is a arts installation which tells the story of Pop My Mind as a platform through the medium of balloons. And there's loads of interactive balloon pieces, and it all takes place under this massive canopy of trees made out of, guess what, balloons. There's a really nice cozy atmosphere under the canopy, and I'm just really glad to have been involved in this project at all. So what Pop My Mind asked me to do is create a piece of music from found sounds at this installation. This all started about a year ago when I created a piece of music out of a balloon by like flicking it and rubbing it and putting water in the balloon, and I captured that all on DSLR and then arranged the video clips to create this musical piece. What I've been asked to do for Inflated Inspirations is similar, but rather than capturing all the audio in front of a camera in the studio, I went to the installation setup and recorded all of my audio there. I wanted this piece to be more traditionally musical than the original piece. To that end, I've spent a lot more time on it, and I've done all of the audio manipulation and stuff inside of Cubase rather than a video editor. For the finished video, the visuals aren't necessarily going to match up with the music, other than they were recorded on the same day and on the same location. Enough backstory. What am I actually going to cover in this behind the scenes how-to style video? I'm going to talk about sampling and playback using Battery and Padshop Pro, creating instruments in Kontakt, automation of instruments and effects inside Cubase, and how to look for specific audio samples in large batches of audio. Before we get into that, let's look at the gear I used to record. So I used a Tascam DR70D, which I use for pretty much everything now. Plugged into that is a single AKG C430 microphone. That's it. I was really limited in what I could actually take because I took a DSLR as well. So everything you're going to hear today was recorded from that microphone and that recording device. Cool, so this is my Cubase project. Let's start off actually by looking at the original audio files, which are these guys over here in the blue. And yes, I do use the same project folder because it means I can just move things back and forth. In order to find samples, I will basically just look through at where all the peaks are. So for instance, I'm curious as to what this is. That's a nice farty sound. What's this? That's the same sound, but with like another motorized thing going on behind it. Those are what they use to inflate the balloons. What else have we got? What's this here? So I think that's the same room I'm recording, but I'm outside in the corridor for that one. What I'm looking for are samples I can use as like percussive things. So this, now it's the same engine. Oh, that's better. So that could be something that I'd sample. The only problem is it's got that kind of descending, whirring sound after it. So that might not be perfect, but that's basically what I'm looking for, is those kind of peaks where obviously something happens. Oh, that could be quite good. That's like a balloon being tied or something, but there's quite a lot of background noise there. So I might not use that. That's essentially what I'll do to find audio samples, and I think I found a load in this sort of area. Yeah, like that pop. If that didn't have the engine under it, that would be used. So that's how you find samples. Basically just whack up the I guess you just zoom in on the wave file, so you see they expand there when you move that up. This little thing in the top right, it just makes things a lot easier to find. So this here, that might not be so obvious, but when you whack that up, you can really see it. Is that a popping sound? Could be a popping sound. So yeah, that's what I did to find the samples. Let's start by looking at the snare sound. So I only actually recorded a single balloon popping, interestingly enough, but I noticed it sounded a lot like a old 808 or 909 snare, so that's what I used it as. I only did a little bit of manipulation. Let's take a look. There's a little bit of EQ going on, multi-band compression, which will basically compress different frequency ranges at a different point. I think I'm just using a snare preset, and then a little bit of reverb just to expand the sound. You'll notice the mix is low. We'll get down to that in a second. So this is the sound. Does sound a bit like a snare. Let's remove all the inserts. This is the original sound. Much the same. This just makes it a little more like a snare. Bit fuller, I guess. So for those, I literally just arranged them over the top of the kick drum to make a pattern. It's that simple. For the kick drum, let's solo that. I got one of the balloon artists to kind of just flick a balloon near the microphone because of the closeness to the mic, especially compared to the rest of the sounds I recorded, which are quite ambient. It has a nice bassy feel to it. So I placed these as if they were a kick drum, using all of the flick sounds rather than just repeating the same one, and added an octaver to it. So there's the octaver to add a lot more bass, and then I've EQ'd it and added a multi-band envelope shaper, just treated it as if it is a bass drum. The reason I've used several audio files rather than repeating the same one is entirely to add variety. This is something that music has in common. Music, when it's performed, has in common with found sounds, real life sounds, and that's that nothing actually sounds identical when it's repeated, so adding variety in this way gives it a bit more life. And for that same reason, I've not been precise when placing the audio files. You see, that's near enough dead on. Where's this one? You see, that one's quite a bit before. And let's see if there's another one. That's precise. But yeah, so there's a bit of variety in the way they're placed as well, just to add a bit more a kind of human, real-life element to it. For both the snare and the kick, I've taken the plugins that I'm using to make them sound more like the instruments, and I've automated them so they don't sound as much like the drum towards the start. The idea is that when we first hear sounds, it just sounds like the installation being set up, and then these musical elements kind of emerge from it. For the snare sample, it's actually really easy. All I've automated is the mix level of the reverb. If we open up the reverb, oh, that's not the reverb, excuse me. The mix level of the reverb, so that's this blue line here. So you can see we start with nothing, and then we gradually add the reverb. So the sound just gets wider and more lively. For the bass drum, there's a little more going on. Let's open that automation. Yep, see, quite a bit. So the octaver, let's take a look at that first. The octaver has these three parameters. So the original volume, the first octave volume, and the second octave volume. So if we pull back right to the start, we can see that we've only got direct volume. And that's this line that reduces as we get towards the second bar of this orange section. The first octave and second octave will increase when we get to about here. So I'll start this here. You'll hear the direct reduce and these two octaves come in. So I don't know how well that'll come through if you're listening on your phone or laptop. I'd suggest trying headphones to really get the effect there, but it's basically just bringing in the bass. That's all there is to that. So let's open up EQ and take a look. So I've got a boost at about 100 Hertz that comes up here, and we're going to reduce just before 500 Hertz, and that reduces here. So let's take a listen to that. Cool. So coupled with the octaver, it's a really nice effect. You can see here I started with a metal bass drum preset, Metal bass drums tend to have a lot of high frequency click because the bass drums go so fast. They need to have a bit more click to them. So I removed that completely. There's nothing going on here. I could have a bit of reduction if I wanted to, but nah, I didn't want to in the end for some reason. So I basically started with the preset and then tweaked little bits until it sounded right to me. Obviously I'm not using a bass drum, so using an unaltered preset doesn't make an awful lot of sense. Not that you should rely on presets anyway, but they are definitely a good starting point. The only other plugin I have here is the multiband envelope shaper, which basically adds a little more pop to certain ranges just to make it a little more percussive. Again, I think I started with acoustic tight kit. I probably didn't tweak it that much because it added just the right amount of pop to it, so it really has a bit more impact. Let me briefly show you how to use automation in general if you wanted to automate something from scratch. So this arrow here in Cubase opens up the automation window, as the little tip says there. So I open that up. Let's say we want to find a new parameter. So we just click on here and all of your basic parameters come up first. So if we wanted to mute or unmute something, if we wanted to pan something left and right or change the volume, we just select that thing and then we select read automation, and then we literally just click in points and then draw in what we want to happen. So for this example, that'll be a volume decrease, an increase, and then a decrease. That's all automation is. I'm using plugins and stuff, so usually when I select the thing I want to automate, I'll have to go to more, and then inside here, if this was an instrument, a VST plugin, we'd have the instrument that we could open as well, as but we've only got inserts because it's an audio. So if I wanted to, well, let's say we were using a delay, which I've obviously turned off, I didn't like it, when we can add the mix for the delay, and let's say we start with no delay down here, lots of delay up here. That's essentially all automation is. If you want to go more in depth with that, there will definitely be a tutorial somewhere online about automation in Cubase. Let's take a look at this percussion track up here. So I selected samples from the massive pile of audio up here, and I grouped them according to roughly what I thought the sounds were. And then I loaded them into Battery. To place a file in Battery, you've got to export it. You've got to bounce it out of your audio software and then re-import it inside the Battery software. So it's a bit fiddly, and you've just got to be careful to name your files in a way that you'll recognize later on. Bringing the files into Battery, you basically stick them on these buttons, and then you can click these buttons and you get the sound you want. And these are the things that you trigger with MIDI. So I have these 3 snap sounds. And as you can see here, they're panned ever so slightly, just to give a sense of largeness, because I don't have anything really panned much in the rest of the piece. So I wanted these to give a bit more size to the finished product. I've got this wheeze sound. I call it wheeze 1. I was expecting more wheezes, but I didn't get them. And then I've got a flap. I don't know what I meant by flap. And I think I just removed a bit of the low end from that just to make it sort of stand out from the kick drum. That's got a load of reverb on it. The wheeze has none, and the snaps have none. Although I think, oh yeah, I put a bit of reverb on as a plug-in as well. So before we take a look at the actual MIDI that's controlling Battery, it might be a good time to talk about the colors I'm using here. I basically change the color depending on the structure of the piece. So this is the A section, which is orange, and there's another orange bit here. So that is the same section, basically a repeat, maybe with tiny adjustments. The B section is green, and this break in the middle is a kind of bluey purple color. Anything that's an adaptation of a section has a slightly similar color. So the intro here, which is a little more ambient, a little less musical than the orange section, this is red. And the second half of the B section has got this teal color, and I've only changed the color of the instruments that actually change. So this percussion is different here. You can see the kick drum pattern changes quite a lot here. Snare drum stays the same, as does the bass and the lead, so there's no reason to change the color there. And then the outro, this yellow bit, is based on the A section, but it's quite different, so I've changed that color to yellow. That really works for me to help me navigate projects, basically. So the MIDI track controlling percussion. Let's open one of these guys up. So once you've loaded stuff into battery, and yeah, there is a bit of a gap between them, but that again helps me separate things. I basically just click on here. Oh, there's one. Until I find where the particular samples are, and then I literally just use my ear. I just use my ear to arrange them into a structure that I like. Perhaps I'll stick the metronome on as well. That's probably a smart idea to make sure you're in time. Or perhaps I'll stick on the other percussive elements as a reference. Just to make sure it fits with those. And let me show you the kind of turquoisey percussion section as well. So this has got a lot more going on, as you can see. I've adjusted the velocity of some of these down here just for when they're played in fast clusters, because that kind of makes them sound a little less digital, basically. I perhaps should have done that here. I imagine when I'm tweaking I will change the velocity of all of these and maybe even the position slightly just to get it sounding a little less rigid and robotic, but I might not. Who knows? In terms of plugins for the percussion, I did play with an EQ, but decided against it in the end, and there's a bit of reverb just to flesh out the sound a bit and kind of make it sound like these are all coming from the same space. And in terms of automation, there's a little bit of volume automation, but that's literally it. So it just starts a bit quieter, especially as there's a lot less going on as well. And then it goes from -10 up to, what does it end on? 0 decibels. So it goes from here to here. Yeah. Padshop Pro. Oh boy. So that's what I use for the lead. We're not going from top to bottom, as you can probably tell. This MIDI file says Kontakt. I think I probably just copied it from the base file and then adjusted it afterwards just to make sure I'm using the same notes. Not such an issue with a found sound project, but it's kind of just saves me a bit of time to copy that down here rather than create a new one and type everything in from scratch. So Padshop comes with Cubase. I upgraded to Padshop Pro because I wanted a little more flexibility. The plugin is a granular synthesizer, and that means that you can play back an audio file, but it's broken up into lots of tiny little grains, and then it plays them all simultaneously. It's an awesome way of capturing the essence or timbre of a sound without playing that exact sample. I've got a video on this channel about how you can mangle guitars using granular synthesis, which is worth a watch if you're intrigued. So this instrument is using the wheeze sample from the percussion track. The cool thing about Padshop is you can just drag and drop an audio file in like that, rather than battery where you have to save it and then find the file, and it's a bit complicated. So let's play a key. So that's the lead sound. All of these white lines that appear up here are the grain that's being played. So we're hearing that many things simultaneously, and as they fade away, that's obviously the them being released, the sound disappearing. I've adjusted the parameters so they're kind of long enough for you to be able to hear that it's a balloon being let go or inflated or whatever it was. But that's something I automate throughout the tracks, so at a certain point it's less obvious that it's actually a balloon sound. Let's have a look at the automation. Yeah, that's quite a lot of automation. So the volume, let's go from top to bottom here. The volume is exactly what you think it does. It fades in here, drops down here, bigger fade in here, bigger fade in here, and then it basically stays at this level, comes up a little bit here, and then fades out ever so slightly towards the end. The grain number is how many individual samples we're hearing. So in the first instance, we've got, what, 3 samples? So it's kind of obvious what the sound is. When we go over to here, this orange section has got 6. It's a little more full, and then it's a lot more full here. And then that alters a bit here purely for interest, and then it starts to reduce here along with the grain speed, which is just the speed at which the grains are being played back at, so it gets a lot more sparse as it fades out. So in my mind, when it gets to this kind of point, it starts to sound like a balloon that's just kind of deflating and flapping around. That's what my mind thinks it is anyway. We've got a bit of a filter going on as well. So the cutoff down here is basically the point at which the filter enacts, the point in terms of frequency, and the resonance is the peak applied to that cutoff. So it's basically how extreme the effect is. There's a bit of adjustment in the green sections just to make it sound a little more like it's being played. So rather than having in this example here, rather than having just the same noise played, it kind of sounds like, I don't know, it's the kind of the similar effects of having a glide. So it's like one seamless or one continuous sound rather than these individual sounds. So you can sort of hear it coming up and then down there. There's also a gradual sweep up, where is it? Here for the intro. So the cutoff's quite low, and then up here it's a bit harsher, and then there's a bit more of a sudden one here in the break. Which cuts down, the volume cuts down here to let this snare pattern sort of come in. What's really cool about Padshop is that all of those things that are automated are inside the instrument. I've not added any inserts to it at all. So let's take a look. So these are all the parameters of the actual instrument itself. And you've also got reverb, which you can automate if you want, and effects like chorus and delay, which you can automate if you want. So everything you hear from this is coming from inside Padshop. It's really powerful and really fun piece of software. Let me just give you another example in terms of automation, because there's so much of it here. Let's say we want to automate the delay mix. So what we want to do is open up the automation panel. Let's use this one. Changing the automation doesn't remove any volume automation. It just means that you get another one of these guys open up. So lead is the name of the instrument, so it'll be in there. Oh boy, there's a lot of stuff here. What have we got? So these are all the master effects. And then layer A, that's what we were using. And there's even more parameters. Yeesh. So we are looking for a delay, I think it was. A delay, where have you gone? Mix, a delay mix. So the delay mix on layers A. You can have a second layer, but I just haven't. So the delay mix, let's put that over there. If we wanted to use that, we could do something like this. So while that bit goes across, watch this button. There you go, went mental, didn't it? I don't actually want that, so I'm just gonna delete all of that automation. Go away. Cool, that's automation and Padshop. Now let's look at the bass instrument, which was created inside of Kontakt 5. I wasn't expecting when I went to this event that the balloons would be inflated with machines. Clearly, I'm a noob when it comes to balloon art. I've accepted that, and it's time for us all to move on with our lives. There's a couple machines they used, which you can see in the original files. We played these earlier. So that first one, the really whiny one, I didn't think there was a lot to that, but I like this buzzing one. I managed to find a bit where that sound was played by itself, because it's really bassy, and surprisingly is the kind of thing you would use for a big rattly electro bass, or something you might get in dubstep or electro. So I thought, yeah, let's have some of that. The whiny noise I did actually use in the intro, just when we're trying to set the scene of this workspace, and I think there's a bit in the break as well. Oh no, there's not, my bad, ignore me. So let's open up Kontakt. There we are. I'm not amazing with Kontakt, I should say. I learned how to do all of what I'm about to show you through a chap called Loudon Stearns, who has some amazing Kontakt tutorials on YouTube I'd highly recommend finding. So I made a brand new instrument and imported this single bass noise into the mapping editor. You can see it's mapped to this. This is the original sound. And then this keyboard will just re-pitch that sound. So that's all you do in terms of mapping, is basically drag and drop. Let's look at the wave editor. So this is the sound file I've imported, and I've created a loop, which is this yellow section around the center of this audio file. So when you press a key, this will just repeat indefinitely until the key is released. So it just keeps going, and then when you take your finger off, it plays the end as well, so it doesn't just stop. So it sounds a little bit more like the actual motor, the machine they used. What other things did I do? So I added this MIDI CC control to the modulation wheel on a keyboard. So it basically means the speed with which the audio file is played back, and I've used MIDI automation to control that. Let's move this out of the way for the second and open up that. See, that's this top one. It's just moving the mod wheel up and down basically. So let's compare this sound. Actually, let's make it so you can actually see that being played. I'm going to run out of space here, aren't I? So with the mod wheel up, it sounds like this. So it's being played so fast you can't even really see it. And then down here, where it's played, it's repeated slower. You can kind of hear it repeat, can't you? So just, again, a bit more variation for the same sample. So that's, again, just a case of adding variety so it sounds like it's performed a little less rigidly. There's elements, again, within the Kontakt instrument like this that you can control with MIDI. The only other things I'm controlling with MIDI automation are the EQ. So it just basically, like the kick drum, gets a bit more bassy, starts here and ends up here. That's all you really need to know. It's the same process as the kick drum, really. Other than that, I've added a quadrafuzz, which adds distortion to different frequency ranges. This is what it sounds like without it. And this is with. Just a bit dirtier, a bit more satisfying to the ears. So that is how I made a piece of music out of the sounds of a balloon installation. I've basically completed the audio side of things. I'm just waiting for the last few video clips of the popping party, the teardown event, and that's going to be added, I don't know, somewhere in the finished video piece, probably with some of the audio as well, but I'll just use the audio from the camera. I'm not going to manipulate that in any way. I don't think that's my plan so far. I've not gone into silly amounts of detail in the actual audio manipulation. I've just given you the basics of what I'm doing, because I think each individual thing really deserves a tutorial in its own right. If that's something I never get round to, then at least now you know what terms and what ideas to search, and there will probably be a tutorial on YouTube somewhere. That's it, really. If you have any questions about what I've done here, leave them in the comments and I'll answer them as best I can. If you want to know more about the installation itself, then you can have a search for Inflated Inspirations or Pop My Mind or VIP Balloons, or search for the hashtag #IIArt. I believe Inflated Inspirations put up a 360 virtual tour of the installation, which is really cool, so you can check that out now. If you like this style of video, if you like looking at this kind of stuff in Cubase and audio manipulation, I do that reasonably regularly. Most of my content is guitar related, so if you're a guitarist, you should subscribe. If you like mangling audio sounds or manipulating samples, you should subscribe as well. You can click the like button if you want. It doesn't really do anything, I don't think, but it's still quite nice. Thanks for watching. Check out Inflated Inspirations, and I'll see you later.